We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, I'm going to be talking about how authorized dealers or watch dealers are going to be dying very quickly. Now, I will say that this does not have anything to do necessarily with pre-owned. In fact, I think the pre-owned segment of the watch industry is probably the fastest growing and also the segment of where authorized dealers should look to expand their business or really retain some of their business as it dies every day. But I'll get there and I'll talk about it. And I will also mention that this is in response to a question that I received on my Instagram, The Real John P. So if there is anything that you'd like to hear about or see in the future, make sure to reach out there. That's where I can see it quickest and I can respond the fastest. Now, it does take some time for me to respond to everyone. I'm not always on there. You know, we do have a shop here at delraywatch.com where, you know, of course, we buy and sell and trade pre-owned watches, so I do stay pretty busy, but I do make sure also to get in there and check when I can. And also, I've not shot a video in a while, and in the coming week or so, probably there'll be a little bit less videos from this channel because I am recovering from a bit of a nasty injury that I took this past weekend, trying to be active, I guess, and just took a bit of an injury. So I'm kind of hobbling around, so to speak. So the videos in the next week, don't worry, I haven't gone anywhere. There might only be, you know, one video in the next week. So let's talk about, oh, by the way, I have to share this with you. On the wrist today, I have an ultra rare, super rare Cartier by Glycine. Let me see if I can get it in focus. If not, there'll be a picture or a video here. But this is a Cartier produced by Glycine for the Cartier boutiques a long time ago. I'm gonna do a whole nother video where I talk much more in depth about the watch. I just took this watch into my personal collection. Just had watchmaker Hans go through it and work his magic in our service center here. So I'm really excited and I'm really happy about this. I'll talk so much more about this in another video in the future. So the topic at hand, authorized dealers, watch dealers, the place where you go to buy a new watch, the brick and mortar retail store. It is dying. It is dying very quickly. And this whole situation with what's going on with the virus and of course the lockdowns, the shutdowns, the quarantines worldwide, but certainly the United States, is what is the catalyst to really push forward the movement of authorized dealers dying. Anyway, I've done videos in the past where I've talked about Audemars Piguet and Richard Mille and some other brands that have just shut down entirely their authorized dealer network. There are a lot of reasons that brands have difficulties with authorized dealers. Now, looking at Rolex, let's set them aside right now because they're a whole nother ball game, and there's something interesting that I think would be helpful for you to know if you're on the sidelines looking and waiting to buy a brand new Submariner or a Daytona, for example. And the same goes for Patek Philippe with a Nautilus, which does allow their dealers to sell online, but I don't know of anyone that's actually sold any watches. So looking at what's going on with authorized dealers and brands, you know, looking at Richemont's pulled out of some of their biggest authorized dealers for other reasons, you know, reasons of being focused on pre-owned more than primary channel. And I won't tell you the name, but I'm sure you heard it in the news not so long ago. But what you see is you see the biggest authorized dealers focusing on the pre-owned segment. You see it with Tourneau. You see it with Govberg Watchbox. You see it with a lot of the others. And that's because they have the resource, they have the people on staff to know and to be able to forecast and model for the future. And the brands, they don't want authorized dealers because the authorized dealers, when financial times get tough, they dump inventory at either their cost or just above, and then they play ball, the authorized dealers, with pre-owned watch dealers. Even, for example, if we want to find someone a brand new watch, someone calls us, they want a brand new watch, they want it from, let's say, Breitling or any of the other brands, with the exception of Patek Philippe or Rolex, we make a few phone calls and there's a whole list of authorized dealers that are willing to give you a pretty steep discount, and we offer that as a service. And we're not the only ones. This is very common. It's been happening for many, many years, is you have some authorized dealers that don't budge at all, and they tend to be the biggest names. But then you have the smaller dealers, the ones that wheel and deal, brand new watches, and they sell watches at huge discounts, and this hurts the brand in so many ways. It allows watches to flood into gray market sites like JomaShop and some of the others, and it also allows customers, if they hunt around, to get a much better price than the advertised retail price. And boutiques rarely, if at all, negotiate. Walk into a boutique for Omega, they're not going to give you a discount. Maybe after this virus they will, but previously, boutiques do not play ball. Boutiques owned by the brands do not play ball. They're trying to set the tone of it being a luxury item, whereas you have everyone else that's kind of working against the brand, because the brand's prestige level is not necessarily in their immediate interest, though keeping the shop open and keeping their employees staffed and everyone happy that works for them and being able to pay their paychecks, that's a whole nother story, and that's in the immediate interest of authorized dealers. So I'm sure you can see that the authorized dealers in the past and the brands have had this kind of symbiotic relationship, but now with the internet and now with what's going on with the virus, it just doesn't make sense for a lot of brands to really focus on the authorized dealers. Now, I can also throw in some facts. Even our web traffic at delraywatch.com has nearly doubled since the beginning of this whole lockdown pandemic situation. It really blows my mind to see some of the web traffic that I'm seeing. I've worked for a lot of other e-commerce brands in the past. I've done a lot of consulting and been in the tech industry, and I'm seeing numbers that honestly are quite shocking. And so for us at the scale that we're at, to kind of transpose that to much larger companies, authorized dealers, and a lot of this information is being talked about in different groups, different chat groups, like chatter groups with dealers that all know each other, right? We know dealers, we know they know us, and people talk about things like web traffic and much more than that. And the chatter out there is those authorized dealers that haven't started selling pre-owned and selling online pre-owned, because a lot of brands, they do not allow you to sell their watches online. That's changing very quickly because of obviously the situation that we have here. But, it was changing as time went on, but now very much so. But they haven't really focused a lot of authorized dealers on online, because people would just go to the store, they'd try on the watch, and they'd buy it. And they'd also sell jewelry and diamonds. And those things are also kind of on the decline. And so as we come out of this situation with the lockdown and the quarantine, and as the restrictions start easing, we're going to see a lot of these businesses either have reduced hours or start to shut down or not have very much on the shelves. Now, with the exception of some brands that are not in high demand, the brands like Rolex and Patek Philippe, which I'm bringing into the conversation now, not necessarily as a whole representative of what's going on in the industry, but with them as an example, because it's probably the most universally acknowledged brands in the watch industry. A lot of people are on the sidelines and they're waiting, in the hopes that their local authorized dealer opens up and all of a sudden they have tons of subs and Daytonas and they can just walk in and buy them. But we have to take into consideration that the Rolex factories have been closed for, probably nearing 2 months now. I don't know the exact dates. The same with the Patek Philippe factories. And they already had backlogs of these watches and people that wanted them at retail. And they're not selling pre-owned or really on the secondary market new for less than retail. So people can still buy them retail and still do all right in terms of if they want to keep it, not necessarily looking to flip the watches immediately for a profit like they would in the past. And many people still believe in kind of the clout that those particular brands with the sports models still provide, as well as the value retention. And so many people are on the sidelines. We get calls and messages and questions, and people say, hey, I'm just going to wait for when the authorized dealers open. And, I'll walk in and buy a Daytona and they'll have the last laugh. And, I'm sorry to say that I don't think it's going to happen. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost in fact positive that for months and months, there's going to be a shortage of brand new Rolex sports models like never seen before. It's not only that the factories have been shut down, it's that there's less employees. And that's the entire workforce in the entire supply chain with those brands. Take into consideration, you have customs agents, you have shipping agents on every single leg of the journey of that watch. And then, of course, you still need the authorized dealer to be able to hire new employees and to stock those watches. And there's just so much in the chain. And so I think we're very far out from being able to actually walk in and get those watches. But when you consider that that particular, let's say Rolex AD, Patek Philippe authorized dealer, they don't have the inventory to sell that they've been living on. I mean, you have authorized dealers that have been paying their bills and growing solely alone from Rolex sports models and the occasional Datejust sales, or the Rolex Day-Date. The sports models have been fueling their sales. And what happens when those sales go away? Well, they have to let go stack, they have to reduce hours, and maybe they even close. So the big boys or the authorized dealers that have access to different forms of capital in terms of loans or government loans, grants, lines of credit, they can probably weather the storm, they can probably survive, but do they even want to? When you hear the market chatter, all the other pre-owned watch dealers as well, they've had no problems at all. There's been exceptions in the lockdowns because a lot of states allow e-commerce brands to remain open. We did work remotely for some time, but not everyone did. And so when authorized dealers start looking at things like online, things like pre-owned, and how they can keep moving forward, they're really going to start thinking about stocking and paying a premium on those brands if they can even get the watches in the door that people want. And sure, maybe in a few years it could recover, or maybe in a few years when everyone else doubles down, all the other authorized dealers that started jumping into trading pre-owned watches because they're better value, or going online and develop more of a strategy that way, you're just going to see them throw in the towel, or it's because it's going to be too late to catch up to everyone else in the industry. If you're selling horses and you say, people don't need cars, they don't need to go that fast, and all of a sudden you have a car dealership on every corner and people are buying the cars, it's going to be extremely difficult to buy a horse. You might sell a horse to an enthusiast or to that person that just can't adapt to the times, but you're not going to be selling enough to where you're going to want to stay in business. Even if the finances are okay, or you can make by as an authorized dealer selling the horses, it's going to be very demotivating to see everyone else selling the cars and doing very well with it and having a pretty grand, joyous time, and you're there trying to sell the horses to the people that are slowly but surely phasing out. And so once again, I hear a lot of chatter in the industry, talk with a lot of people, talk with a lot of authorized dealers as well. That's one thing I always love to do, is to get perspective and communicate and make connections with people that are in different situations and setups and business models, and you just learn so much that way. And what I'm learning is that model of authorized dealer, while I already thought and was pretty sure it would go away eventually, is completely being pushed to going away as soon as possible. And the longer this lockdown stays in place for everyone, not talking about politics or whether it should, but the longer this lockdown stays in place for authorized dealers, the sooner authorized dealers will go away in some capacity. But what do you guys think? Are any of you on the sidelines waiting for that Rolex Daytona stainless steel to come in at your authorized dealer? Or perhaps you picked one up. Are there any of you that disagree with me, or perhaps you agree with me? I would love to hear it in the comments below. Also, please do not forget to ask me any questions or comments that you'd like to see in the future, and feel free to do that in the comments below if you do not have Instagram. Okay, guys, I have to get back to work. Thanks for watching. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.